I think that I thought I was dealing with it, and I genuinely thought that I had.
I think all these things happen at the time they're meant to happen. I think, funny enough, if we had got together at the start when we were working together, because you know when you're working together first, you can kind of get on each other's nerves a wee bit.
Deeley and Patrick Kielty have revealed they are splitting after 13 years.
Once upon a time, theirs was the kind of story the media loved to sell as proof that fairy tales could still happen. Deeley, the bright-eyed presenter who defined a generation of British television, a household name from SMTV Live to So You Think You Can Dance.
Welcome to So You Think You Can Dance. Yeehaw! I want you in latex. Did I hear correctly?
And Patrick Kielty, the Irish comedian who rose from tragedy and sharpened his craft until he became one of the most recognizable voices of his homeland.
Thank you so much, folks. What a lovely welcome. I was standing out the back there like Joe Duffy about to be introduced to the Wolf Tone gig. So you've no idea how nice that feels.
Two people, two worlds, colliding in a moment of serendipity that would lead them to a Las Vegas wedding in 2012, a union drenched in charm, optimism, and the promise of a lifetime together. They were TV's golden couple, a pairing that looked, on paper and on screen, like a script too perfect to fail. For more than a decade, they managed to keep much of their private life away from the tabloids, raising two sons while balancing careers that constantly pulled them in different directions.
And are praying for a miracle to make it stop. In the midst of despair, miracles are hard to believe in, but it's worth remembering that we are currently living our own miracle on this island because we are living in peace.
But behind the smiles and the carefully chosen words in interviews, something was unraveling, slowly, quietly, until 2025, when the headlines broke.
Deeley and Patrick Kielty have revealed they are splitting after 13 years together. The couple, who wed in 2012, announced they had called it quits today. They said in a joint statement, "We have taken the decision to end our marriage and are now separated. There is no other party involved. We will continue to be united as loving parents to our children and would therefore kindly ask for our family privacy to be respected. There will be no further comment."
Deeley and Patrick Kielty were separating after 12 years of marriage. And suddenly, the same media that once painted them as untouchable began circling like vultures.
Deeley and Patrick Kielty have revealed they are splitting after 13 years together. The couple, who wed in 2012, announced they have called it quits today. They said in a joint statement.
The pair, who have just announced their separation this week, had been living in the U.S. for a considerable time,
Desperate to turn love into spectacle and heartbreak into currency. What went wrong? How did two people who seemed so perfectly aligned in charm and ambition end up staring down the cold reality of distance, silence, and fractured trust? The easy answer, the one tabloids were quick to push, is that marriages fail, love fades, people drift apart. But with Patrick and Kat, the story is far more layered and far more brutal, because it's not just a story of two individuals. It's a story about careers that demanded everything, about fame that comes with invisible costs, about ambition that builds empires but quietly erodes intimacy.
So it wasn't your intention originally to get us because Kat was working?
Well, we're back and forward quite a lot, you know, so we're quite lucky that I'm able to do some work over here and she's able to do her work over there, and, you know, we spend quite a lot of time in the air.
This isn't simply a breakup. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when success pulls harder than love can hold. At the heart of this collapse lies a house. A £5 million Hampstead mansion, once their sanctuary, now their battlefield. For the outside world, it's just a piece of London real estate, a trophy of celebrity wealth. But for Kat and Patrick, it's become a symbol of everything they can't reconcile. Reports suggest Kat wants to stay there with the children, to keep some form of stability, while whispers imply Patrick feels cornered, as though the very home he helped build is now being used as a weapon against him. In a way, this house is the perfect metaphor for their marriage, grand, admired, photographed, but full of cracks that no one on the outside could see. Homes are supposed to hold memories, laughter, warmth. Yet when love dies inside, walls become prisons, and doors become barriers. Hampstead isn't just bricks and mortar anymore. It's a silent witness to the disintegration of two lives once intertwined. And then, there's Patrick.
Disagreeing or ignoring another opinion or another way of life doesn't make it go away. We've had to share things in Northern Ireland for a while now. For a long time we didn't, and it got us nowhere. Sometimes compromise is slow, frustrating, torturous. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all, but we are still sharing the same space.
On paper, his life has never looked brighter. Hosting the Late Late Show, pulling record audiences for the toy show, steering his media company Boxed Productions to profits north of 1.7 million euros. A man at the peak of his career, commanding prime time, commanding respect, commanding influence. But success is cruelly double-edged, and behind the cameras, Patrick has been carrying burdens few can fathom.
It is so nice to be back with you, especially after this summer where I've genuinely been blown away by all the love and support that you guys have sent my way.
Just months before the separation went public, he lost his mother, Mary, a wound that fame cannot heal. And now, with his marriage dissolving in the glare of headlines, the victories begin to feel hollow. What is the worth of record ratings when the seat at home is empty? What is the worth of profits when the family structure collapses? Patrick has always been a man who could find laughter in tragedy, who could wrap grief in wit. But this is not the kind of pain comedy can soften. And it leaves him exposed, stripped down, forced to reckon with the cost of being both a public success and a private casualty. Meanwhile, Kat is undergoing a transformation of her own. For years, she has been the picture of daytime stability, the face millions turned to on ITV's This Morning. But now, with the split, every gesture she makes is scrutinized, every move turned into speculation.
Presenter Kat Deeley confessed that relocating back to the UK with her husband Patrick Kielty and their 2 children was really hard.
An awkward moment occurred on This Morning when Kat Deeley appeared to admit she and co-host Ben Shepherd cheat when fronting one of the show's competitions.
Many celebrities have reacted to Kat Deeley revealing she cheated during a segment on This Morning.
A symbol that spoke louder than any official statement. Photos of her abroad, smiling alongside friends, become headlines of reinvention or whispers of hidden sorrow. Some call her liberated, finally free to live on her own terms. Others paint her as cold, ruthless, or even opportunistic, eager to seize the London home and move on. The truth? It lies somewhere between. Kat is not just a TV host navigating ratings. She is a woman navigating survival, image, and motherhood under the unrelenting lens of fame. And perhaps the cruelest irony is this. For all her years perfecting the art of connecting with strangers through a camera, she now finds herself unable to control the narrative of her own story. And then comes the media frenzy, the inevitable feeding cycle that turns heartbreak into headlines, speculation into sales. Joint statements are brushed aside. No third party involved, united as parents, because the tabloids thrive not on clarity but on chaos. Every photograph of Kat without Patrick, every Late Late Show clip without a wedding band, becomes fuel for a narrative machine that doesn't care about truth, only about clicks. This is where the real tragedy lies. Because in truth, Patrick and Kat are not villains or heroes in their own story, they are simply human, caught in a storm larger than themselves, a storm fed by an industry that both made them and now threatens to consume them. Their separation is not just a personal loss, it's a public spectacle, one they never signed up for, but one they cannot escape. And so, we are left with questions, not answers. Was their love doomed by the demands of ambition? Was the house in Hampstead just the final straw in a long, slow unraveling? Or are we simply seeing the price of living life in the spotlight, where every triumph comes with an invisible tax, every choice is magnified, and every mistake becomes a headline? Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley's story is not finished. It's still unfolding in real time, in front of us all. But as we watch, as we speculate, as we scroll through the latest updates, maybe the real story here isn't about their marriage at all. Maybe it's about us, about how quick we are to turn people into symbols, how easily we consume their pain as entertainment, and how blind we are to the human cost of fame. They always said opposites attract, and in the beginning, that was their magic. Kat was the polished presenter with a global audience, the queen of primetime gloss. Patrick was the quick-witted Irishman, the comedian who could take the rawest subject and make it bearable through laughter. When they collided, the balance seemed perfect. But the thing about balance is that it's fragile. And when ambition tilts the scales, cracks start to show. For Kat, Los Angeles was once home, the place where she hosted So You Think You Can Dance and mingled with Hollywood's elite. For Patrick, home was always Ireland, a heartbeat away from the history and community that shaped him. They tried to bridge the gap, tried to bend geography into submission. But love doesn't always win against flight schedules, rehearsals, contracts, and the relentless ticking clock of live television. Distance doesn't always break marriages outright. Sometimes, it just erodes them slowly, piece by piece, until the foundation is too weak to stand. What makes this story so uniquely devastating is that both Kat and Patrick weren't struggling careers trying to find footing. They were thriving. Kat's appointment to This Morning alongside Ben Shepherd cemented her as a cornerstone of UK daytime TV. Patrick's takeover of the Late Late Show in Ireland was historic, giving him one of the most high-profile platforms in the country. On paper, they were conquering everything they touched. But in reality, two separate thrones in two separate kingdoms left very little room for shared space. It's not that they didn't try. They did. For years. But marriages don't just run on love, they run on time. And time was the one currency they couldn't afford to spare. The home they shared in Hampstead became their anchor, a meeting point, a grounding space for their children. Yet, ironically, it became the very focal point of their split. A £5 million fortress of glass and stone, now symbolic of both comfort and conflict. The whispers of dispute over who stays, who leaves, and who gets to call it home have become the narrative outsiders latch onto. Because a house is tangible. It can be photographed, priced, debated. It's easier for tabloids to write about walls and roofs than the intangible heartbreak of two people realizing they no longer move as one. And so the house becomes the stage, the setting where love quietly died, and conflict took its place. But let's not mistake Patrick for a man broken by failure. If anything, his public life has been defined by resilience. This is someone who lost his father to sectarian violence in Northern Ireland, who built his career out of comedy laced with tragedy, who turned pain into performance long before the cameras ever framed his marriage. Yet even for him, the timing of these events feels cruel. Just as his professional world reached its zenith, with the Late Late Show breaking ratings and his production company thriving, his personal world was collapsing. Add to this the grief of losing his mother, Mary, and suddenly success becomes a hollow victory. Viewers see the sharp, witty host keeping the show afloat. But behind the stage lights, Patrick is a son in mourning, a husband facing separation, a father trying to protect his children from the very headlines his career makes impossible to avoid. And that is where the tragedy deepens, when the job that made you is also the spotlight that exposes you. Meanwhile, Kat Deeley's reinvention is unfolding in real time, not through interviews or confessions, but through subtle, almost silent signals. The wedding ring that migrated to her right hand. The choice to step out publicly without Patrick by her side. The images of her abroad, where a smile for the cameras disguises 1,000 private emotions. Reinvention is a loaded word. To some, it looks like liberation. Kat finally reclaiming her independence, no longer defined by her marriage but by her own trajectory. To others, it looks like detachment and indifference to the shared history she's leaving behind. The truth is rarely one or the other. Reinvention, for Kat, is both shield and sword. It protects her from being defined solely as the wife of Patrick Kielty, but it also cuts ties with a chapter that once held so much promise. And in that contradiction lies the power of her narrative. She is both breaking and building at the same time. But here's where the real danger creeps in. The narrative is no longer theirs to control. In the vacuum of silence, tabloids write the story for them. One week, Kat is portrayed as the cold-hearted opportunist clinging to the London mansion. The next, Patrick is painted as the tragic hero, the man abandoned in his hour of grief. These caricatures sell papers and generate clicks, but they erase the complexity of two human beings navigating a private collapse. And that's the cruel reality of modern celebrity. The public will not accept nuance. They demand heroes and villains, winners and losers. But marriages don't break in headlines. They break in whispers, in the quiet spaces between words left unsaid. The tragedy of Patrick and Kat is that their whispers are drowned out by the roar of media speculation. And so, the frenzy grows. Every paparazzi shot becomes evidence. Every absence is interpreted as distance. Every smile is dissected for meaning. Their joint statement, simple, respectful, insisting there was no third party, barely registered. Because the truth is boring. Scandal sells. And the narrative machine thrives not on clarity but on chaos. The couple that once symbolized love-defying odds is now reduced to clickbait, a storyline in the endless soap opera of celebrity culture. And yet, the deeper you look, the more you realize their story is less about scandal and more about survival. Two people navigating the brutal cost of ambition, family, and fame colliding in ways no one can truly prepare for. Now let's pivot deeper into Kat Deeley's side of the story, because while Patrick Kielty's reinvention on Irish screens has sparked debate, Kat has been living a parallel narrative across the Atlantic. For years, she was one of the UK's most familiar faces, a household staple with a career that glowed brightly in Britain before she jumped across the pond to crack America. And unlike so many UK stars who fade quietly after one season in the States, Kat not only survived, she thrived. Hosting So You Think You Can Dance turned her into a primetime icon in the US, earning Emmy nominations, Hollywood recognition, and cementing her as a polished yet warm broadcaster. But here's where the tension quietly brews, her American polish versus his Irish grit. Patrick's career has been defined by political edge, self-deprecating humor, and the willingness to jab at sacred cows. Kat's was always elegance, ease, and charm, the perfect television package for glossy networks. And when you bring those two worlds into one marriage, the differences don't just vanish. They hover, they linger, and they sometimes clash. The split, at least according to close friends and whispers in the media, wasn't just about geography, it was about style, about priorities, about who they had to become in order to succeed in their respective corners of the world. And here's the kicker. When Kat reportedly packed her bags and moved out of the Hampstead home, people rushed to assume this was just another celebrity breakup, a simple, they grew apart, narrative. But that ignores the deeper symbolism. Kat wasn't just moving out of a house. She was moving out of a shared identity. That house was their anchor in London, the place that represented compromise between Hollywood's glare and Ireland's intimacy. By leaving, Kat was, in a way, saying, I choose me, I choose my space, I choose not to live in his shadow or be dragged into his controversies. But here's what the public often forgets. In stories like these, it isn't just two people separating, it's two public figures being pulled apart by the machinery of the media. And the way the press has chosen to frame Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley says everything about the narratives we, as audiences, are fed. On one side, you've got Kat portrayed as the graceful survivor, the woman who left the London house with quiet dignity, the star who can juggle a Hollywood career while shielding her kids from the noise. The media loves to position her as this almost untouchable figure of composure, a modern-day TV queen who walked away from the chaos without a hair out of place. Then, there's Patrick. And here, the media isn't kind. Every headline about him seems sharper, harsher, dripping with undertones of failure or scandal. The late show ratings dip, the audience switching off, the controversial remarks, all amplified until Kielty isn't a comedian, isn't a husband, isn't a man, he's just a walking headline. The press loves him as a target because he's combustible, one sarcastic comment, one poorly timed joke, and they've got tomorrow's viral outrage. And this split has become ammunition. Kat's departure is no longer just personal, it's being used as proof of Patrick's decline. Tabloids run side-by-side features. Kat flourishing in Los Angeles, Patrick stumbling in Dublin. It's almost theatrical, like a morality play where one represents light and the other represents shadow. And this narrative isn't always fair. It flattens two human beings into characters for public consumption. And yet, viewers eat it up. Because deep down, the public doesn't want a simple breakup. They want sides. They want a hero and a villain, a saint and a sinner. And whether intentionally or not, the media has positioned Kat as the sympathetic figure and Patrick as the flawed one. That's the story that sells papers, grabs clicks, and keeps their names trending. But pause and think, what does that do to both of them? Kat, no matter how private she wants to be, is still defined by her connection to Patrick. And Patrick, no matter how much he wants to succeed on his own terms, is haunted by the idea that every professional stumble will be tied back to his failed marriage. This isn't just a split, it's a narrative prison. Patrick Kielty's challenges on The Late Late Show are not just about ratings, they've become a public referendum on his very identity. When he stepped into the role, it wasn't just a hosting gig, it was a chance to re-establish himself as a cultural heavyweight in Ireland. But the shadow of his marriage loomed large. Every stumble on air, every awkward exchange, every controversial joke now gets reframed through the lens of the man Kat Deeley left behind. Suddenly, Patrick isn't being judged just as a presenter, he's being judged as the ex-husband of a woman who seems to thrive while he falters. And this is the cruel cycle. His professional missteps feed into the personal narrative, while the personal split feeds into the professional decline. It's a loop the media has no intention of breaking, because it sells too well. Each time he tries to reinvent himself, the headlines drag him back into the role of the flawed partner, the man struggling to live up to expectations, the man audiences supposedly switched off from. Meanwhile, Kat doesn't even have to say anything, her silence becomes power. She's the quiet success story, the elegant survivor. And in a world where perception matters as much as reality, Patrick can't compete with that. The contrast becomes the story. He's raw, flawed, and fighting. She's polished, thriving, and moving forward. The media loves a split screen, and here they have one that almost writes itself. But here's the uncomfortable truth the press won't say out loud. This isn't just about Kat and Patrick. It's about us, the viewers, the readers, the audiences who click on every headline, who watch every shaky late clip, who share every paparazzi shot of Kat smiling on a Los Angeles street. We've turned their personal lives into a morality play, and in doing so, we've trapped them both. Because neither of them can escape the story until we let it go. And right now, we're not ready to let go. So where does that leave them? Patrick, stuck in the furnace of public scrutiny, trying to prove that he's still relevant, still sharp, still capable of leading Ireland's biggest talk show without being defined by who he used to love. And Kat, carving out her own space in Hollywood, raising her children, and showing the world that sometimes the best move you can make is walking away from a house that no longer feels like home. Two people, once united by love, now united by a narrative they can't control. And that's where we leave it. Not with a fairy tale ending, not with a reconciliation, but with a question. What happens when your private heartbreak becomes a public spectacle? What happens when love, career, and legacy collide under the harsh light of fame? For Kat Deeley and Patrick Kielty, the story isn't over, it's still unfolding. And for us, the audience, the only question is, whose side of the screen do you believe? If you've made it this far, you've seen how the media has torn apart one marriage and turned it into a soap opera for the masses. But what do you think? Is Kat Deeley the hero and Patrick Kielty the villain? Or is this just another case of the press building one up by tearing the other down? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is far from finished. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because when the next chapter drops, you'll want to be here first.